Over the past couple of months, I've been playing mainly looter shooters and competitive shooters, and recently I wanted to change the pace, at least for a few days. So I went onto Steam and I started looking for a game that'd give me a more laid back or casual experience. There were a lot of really good games I took a look at, but I couldn't really decide on one. But then, I found it. Kotel is a first-person shooter with platforming elements. Your only weapons are rakes that you can shoot, and you have unlimited ammo. In each level, you need to find your way to the high ground so you can destroy an orb, and you need to do this without falling off the map and while being chased by an endless amount of enemies who will one-shot you. The entire game you're followed by a flying head, which one reviewer described as Bobby Hill but Asian. Apparently Bobby Hill is your ally whose purpose is to provide light for you since the map is pitch black in a lot of areas. I wish I would have known that because I shot at him throughout my entire playthrough and I never could figure out why he wouldn't die. The game doesn't give you hints, there's no UI at all actually, and every cutscene between levels will leave you with fewer brain cells after watching it.
Наш комитет поможет тебе. Найди шары и спаси дурку.
In all seriousness, this game is awesome. The movement speed is great, the sprint speed feels fast, and you can double jump. The player movement feels identical to the movement in recent Doom games. You can spam fire rakes as fast as you can click your mouse as well. Checkpoints are frequent, which is convenient because you'll die a lot in some areas. Sometimes the path forward is obvious, but other times you'll have to wander around before you figure it out. The entire time there are audio cues coming from every direction. The Bobby Hill head constantly says Kotel, your character constantly says Kotel, and some enemies sound like a group of girls screaming at a Jonas Brothers concert in 2008. If you play this game for more than a few hours, then the sound cues alone may be enough to drive you insane. But if not, then the visuals probably will. Most of the game is relatively easy. Like I mentioned, there are areas where you die a few times until you figure out the mechanics or where to go, but the final boss fight is the exception to that rule. The boss arena is circular with enemies constantly spawning and the bosses flying overhead. It honestly felt like a Doom arena where you're constantly on the move and crowd controlling a horde of enemies. You have to be extremely close to the boss to do damage, but once you figure that out, then you can burn him down pretty quickly. Also, the boss doesn't regen health whenever you die, which is really convenient. The game was made by Derevotyan, and they've made other games in the same vein as well. The first being Samazbar ID Heaven, which is slightly less deep fried than Kotel. It's closer to being an actual first-person shooter because you actually have a gun, and I'm sure I'd thoroughly enjoy it. I tried to find some memes in the review section, but there's just a bunch of positive reviews. Next, we have Saturday of Piercing Screams. One reviewer described this game as Russian Fever Dream Castlevania. When I read that, I just instantly gave up on trying to find a better way of describing the game. There are some pieces of media that are just so bad that they're good, and Kotel only kind of fits into that category. The Room by Tommy Wiseau is a perfect example of a movie that's so bad that it's good. Tommy tried to make a movie that was good, but it ended up being bad, but that made it good. But Kotel is more like John C. Reilly whenever he's playing Dr. Steve Brule. He's purposely making a bad public access show where he can't pronounce the guests' names, looks at the wrong camera, and interviews his imaginary brother. I didn't get the break from shooters that I originally was looking for whenever I started up Steam, but I did experience the most unique games I've ever played. Kotel is cursed, deep fried, worth the $1 price tag, and completely worth your time.